I'm Josh. That's David. And this is the Have Rods Will Travel podcast. All right, David. So we are back again with another episode of the Have Rods Will Travel podcast. What have you been up to lately?
Nothing really. I only got out fishing for the second time this past weekend. That was
All right.
kind of fun. Didn't get what I was looking to catch, but
All right.
I went over to the East Coast and tried chunking those big poppers for those big Jack Crevalle, but they eluded me. The guy I was linking up with is somebody who'll actually be on my podcast tomorrow. Of course,
Right.
the time that this drops, it will have already happened.
Right.
Yeah, he wasn't able to get off work till late, so I was pretty much out there just trying it blind, and it became evident pretty quickly that I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
So,
Did you
but
finally get to utilize that surf fishing setup that you purchased and your 2-piece setup that came in 3 pieces?
yeah. Yeah, it went okay. I mean, I ended up getting one black tip on a popper, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I never caught a shark on a artificial lure, so that was different. But it was, there's no photos to show for it because, dude, catching that thing was the biggest cluster. I mean, I can go into it if you want, but it was just I don't know, so characteristic of the kind of crap that you and I get into.
Well, go ahead and elaborate as long as it's not going to upset anyone. I know.
There's nothing upsetting. I mean, it was, we fished kind of into the night, and we ended up fishing off this jetty.
Yeah.
And I don't do a lot of jetty fishing. I'd kind of forgotten that the further down the jetty you go, where the waves are really lapping over the top of the rocks, those rocks become subject to the growth of moss.
Yeah.
So it was like ice skating on the top of this death trap.
Yeah.
So this guy David, his name is also David. He had a set of spiked boots in his car specifically for that, like cleats.
Wow.
But he only had one set. So he's like, well, you wear one boot and I'll wear the other boot.
I like this guy already. Yeah.
So he's like, so you'll have one good foot and I'll have one good foot. And just when one bites, just make sure to put your good foot forward.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this is about to be bad. So we were out there popping, and I don't know, the jacks just weren't, they just weren't there. But I ended up getting smoked by a black tip, and I've forgotten how hard those bastards fight on. I mean, I guess my surf gear that I've caught them on in the past was bulkier and more powerful, because this thing was killing me. And I don't know if it's because the shark, I don't know if it's so much that the shark was powerful as it was I was running the risk of it. It ran straight to the jetties. So ran straight onto the rocks. So there's no fighting it. It was cinched down the drag all the way tight. But then the tighter you go, the more your feet want to slide.
Yeah.
So he's sitting here holding on to my waistband. I got one foot this planted on the rocks and the other foot sliding around like crazy. It was just a cluster. And then we end up, then you land it on jetty rocks with waves crashing up against it. And this was a jetty where it's you don't just walk down to the rocks. It's this drop off. It was a 6-foot straight drop and then some rocks. Mm-hmm. So I'd reeled this shark up into these rocks, and then I had to basically he held my hand and lowered me down this jetty. So I'm balancing on one slippery rock. Then the shark's got a face full of treble hooks. It's not a nice circle, Mm-hmm. It's God, treble hooks all sticking out its face.
Yeah.
This is not a good situation. There's no good way to contain the fish.
Yeah.
So I ended up grabbing it by its head and just pushing it against the jetty and leaning against it. So I had this shark with a mouthful of teeth, a giant 8-inch popper with massive treble hooks right in my crotch.
What could go wrong?
Now this has got 1,000 different ways it can go poorly.
Yeah.
And so it was just at some point it was just more worth getting the shark free and releasing it than even trying to get the photos. Would have been so bad, but it was a pretty cool experience. I mean, I hadn't done anything like that in a long time, but Man, it's like I left there and I'm like, man, I got to come back. I got to get one of those big jacks. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was
it's
pretty fun.
it's cool you're making these connections through your podcast because it's like I get to hear about these people through you before I ever like potentially meet them. So
Yeah.
hearing that guy's mindset of like each person taking a boot and we try to make it work like that. I don't know. I think I would get along with that dude pretty well.
I don't know
So
that the surf culture, especially on
yeah,
the East Coast, is full of nothing but grinders. Like, I mean, we
yeah,
went out there with Mike that one time, and it was
yeah.
kind of
Mike
like,
Bass night.
and so this guy's cut from the same cloth, and then like
Yeah,
his just story, which people will hear in due time, is very much of coming from nothing.
yeah,
And then so he has it in him to grind. Like he's been
yeah,
forged in the fire himself. So, but he was a cool dude. I definitely want to link back up with him. But
yeah,
that's kind of the cool thing about the podcast is like you're actually getting to know people. It's like it's
yeah,
real easy to be like on your screen talking to somebody and like
yeah.
be suspicious of like I don't
What
know what
type
their
of person
intentions
they are?
are, but
Right.
yeah, but as soon as you actually get to flow in regular conversation,
Yeah.
it's just different. But yeah, that was pretty cool though.
Yeah, he's on episode 5 of Boundless Pursuit. Is it David Rocca?
Yeah.
Roca?
Now his real name, I don't know how to pronounce. I don't even want
Okay.
to try it, but
Okay.
that's just like I don't know some Instagram nickname he came up with.
Right.
But
I got you.
yeah,
That's solid.
it's an interesting one because like in Florida, like you're going to be hard pressed to be the guy of
Yeah.
anything because everybody's an angler and there's always somebody more skilled. It's
Yeah.
Florida, but he has like somehow found himself at like the top of the heap with this whole. He's like the only guy doing it, or if there's other people doing it, like he's the one like
As far
throwing
as
these.
jacks, is that
Yeah,
where
fishing them like the way that you would fish for like GTs.
right.
Why no one else is doing it, I don't know. Because the dude's catching like 40, like fish between 40 and 50 pounds,
Wow.
slinging these massive poppers, like fishing and crashing waves. I mean, it's an exciting style of fishing.
Yeah.
And he has like really, I don't know, he's like positioned himself at when you think of like South Florida giant Jack Crevalle, like you think that guy. Like
Yeah.
he's the one. So
That's
that's
cool.
pretty cool. It's pretty hard to be that guy in anything,
Yeah, for
especially in
sure.
Florida.
Be cool to like I don't know if he's the type of guy that's into filming. I know a lot of those guys are super secretive, but if he ever were, it'd be cool to film an episode on that stuff. That type of fishing and like the perils that go along with that would be cool to catch
Yeah.
on camera, you know. But it's good stuff, dude. Are you taking? I know we're sort of tentatively planning this thing for the end of the month as far as going to Idaho. Like, are you planning on taking surf gear? Are you going to take that stuff with you, or how are we? We haven't
Probably.
really talked.
Yeah,
We
no,
kind of
it's
workshop this right now. I don't know exactly what our plans are. I talked to Steve a couple days ago, and he said he procured a jet boat for us to use. So we can do that.
Oh
instead.
wow, that's
Yeah,
cool.
I think it's his father-in-law's. So I've been like slowly prodding at Steve to try to get him to buy a boat. I'm like, Steve,
Yeah.
you should buy a boat before we go, you know. But I think his father has a jet boat, and we might utilize that in some capacity. But I think the end of March is going to be pretty good, like with fish movements and the locations in which we can catch them. Like I think where I got my biggest one when I was out there, I think that spot is going to be hot again. So it's like it's good in spring, it's good in fall. So I think we're going to be hitting the spring cycle on that. So it's cool, man. I wish we had a way to get my side scan to David out there, because seeing those things on sonar is ridiculous. There's no mistaking. Like you launch the boat and you're
Yeah.
just cruising and you see it's not, you know how sonar like, oh, that might be a fish. Like it's a perfect outline of a sturgeon.
Right. Yeah.
And then like if you keep your speed consistent, you can compare it to other fish and you can see which one's the biggest. And literally like it's easy. You're cruising along, you get up river from them 100 yards, you drop a bait down, and they're gonna eat it. Like
Yeah.
I always find it curious how like, you know, fishing in general is pretty hard depending on what you try to do. But like these bigger species, like it's always surprising to me how actual like easy and willing they are to bite. Like
Yeah.
we always run into the problem. Like it's always catching bait that seems to be the problem with these things. But once you have bait, it's like you catch them. It's no big deal.
Right.
So you would think that like chasing these monster fish would be like
I guess it's
overly.
nice if that's like the least of your concern or the most of your concerns. If just simply getting bait is the biggest hump you got to get over.
Yeah, but then if like that becomes a challenge, it's like the most frustrating thing it could possibly be.
Oh God,
Like
I know.
that I think we're gonna get into talking about our alligator gar trip a little bit, but that was by far like the most aggravating thing. It's like we know where we need to fish, we know what we need to do, we have all the gear, we're primed and ready to do it, but just getting the bait. And that's always been
Yeah.
my problem going to Texas is like we'd either be using frozen stuff that, I'd fish with Brian, who you met out there, and like Brian is like all of us, he doesn't have a lot of free time. So like the lead up to our trip, he's like catching bait and freezing it. So like once I get there, we can just start fishing. But then like you do a couple of trips of that, and you're like, maybe this frozen bait isn't the best. Like maybe it's painful when you're fishing the same time as like some of the other guys and they're catching and you're not. It's like it's got to be something. Like we're not.
It's also annoying when like the time is ticking and like your flight to leave. Well, at least in my case, I'm booked to leave on a set date.
Yeah.
And so it's like even burning a few hours to chase bait is very frustrating. It's like, we got to get this over with quick because I'm not here to be catching bait.
Yeah. It always seems to be the struggle, man. No matter like what the trip is, like all these giant, it's because they're also species you can't really get on artificial, like not the caliber of fish we're looking for. Yeah. It's not like you can just get there and start fishing for them. You have to catch your bait. So like Goliath grouper, same deal. Like, got to get your bait before you can get the fish. White sturgeon, got to go. You have to go on a fishing trip before you can go on your fishing trip. Like,
I know.
The stuff out in Idaho for those white sturgeon, like you literally have to go and like do a float trip to catch rainbow trout before you ever even begin sturgeon fishing. And when you're doing something where you can see them on sonar like that, it's like the fish is right there, and I have nothing to drop down for. Like it's I don't know. It's super frustrating, but I don't know. It's just part of it. It's funny. Like you think it'd just be one fish species would be that problem, and it seems to be all of them. Anything you need live bait for, it's always aggravating. Even
and bait stores aren't going to be selling that. I don't know. I was like kind of curious about in Idaho if there's like fish markets. Maybe that's more of like along the Pacific Northwest coastline thing. I mean, I would just be so sure that they'd have similar type of like commercial fish markets that have, I don't know, something you could get if you got into an absolute bind, but maybe not in Idaho.
I think back in the day, Steve used to use a lot of like smelt, like it would come prepackaged, but the good thing about like sturgeon fishing like that is it's not like your bait fish is actively hunting. It's not like carp where you're like wait for them to come through and graze on your bait. Like you can physically get out there and cast for trout and feel like you're being proactive. So that's the cool thing about it. And I mean when we were catching our bait, we were catching like big trout. Like the trout we were catching would be like you do a totally separate trip just to do that. So
yeah, if the bait's coming easy, then at least it's kind of an enjoyable like side mission. Yeah, it's like a fun thing to do, but not when it's not coming and you ain't got time to be playing.
Yeah, that always feels like how the Goliath grouper stuff that when we team up for that. That's always what it feels like. It's like what fish market is open right now to where we can get, and then like the bait you get's a couple days old probably, and it's smaller than what you want, and you're like, is this gonna work, or is it, I don't know.
Right.
You gotta like have a direct link to somebody.
Also not fun to buy the bait. It's like, like literally paying this money just to like throw it into the ocean.
Yeah, well that's the other thing.
I guess that's any bait, but it's like more expensive.
The problem I always have with that situation, because sometimes I have to do it here for blue cats. I just have a terrible time catching shad, and it's like whatever. I'll just But there's that little. Anytime you're not using 100% fresh, there's that little like dark corner in the back of your mind when you're like sitting there for hours. You're like, is
my bait too old?
Is this not working because of the bait? Like when we were Goliath grouper fishing, you'd sit out there basically all night, and you're like, is that fish down there? And we're just doing a terrible job at feeding it, or is it just not there? So
I'm convinced when you do that, the Goliath is there.
Yeah.
looking at the bait.
Yeah.
Like there is a Goliath on every single one of those pilings.
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
just one of those things, but yeah, I think that so you have what 4 days off for that trip? Is that the idea?
I don't even remember. I got to count it up, something like that. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be ample time up there. But yeah, I will definitely bring my own gear.
Yeah.
My thing is like I've got the surf rods, but then like my next thing that I have is like the Avet Goliath grouper rig, and I'm like, well, is
Yeah.
that's probably overkill there. I don't really have a medium zone.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing that I have to figure out because I've never traveled with rods in that capacity. So I know
I feel like my 8500 spin reels should be sufficient if you're in a boat and you've got like the leeway to follow them.
Yeah. Well, I have plenty of conventional reels that I can bring. It's just the rod situation. Like that's what we did. I took the reels with me when I went out there the first time when I flew, and then Steve had rods. So I don't know. We'll figure something out. But I'd like to try form a little bit more on the surf rod. Like that the one time, like the one fish we caught was just such an immediate thing that happened so quickly you didn't have time to process it, and it was like the last night of fishing. We didn't really get a lot of time to do that.
Well, that like looked like the most exciting one to me. Like I don't want to like say, oh, I really want it to happen like that. I just want to get one.
Yeah.
But if I was able to pick or choose, like if it was able to happen for me in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like when the video clip of you battling that one in the darkness with a headlamp on, I'm like, that is cool.
It was nuts, man. We literally like I was talking to Grant and Harley about this last night when we recorded. There's some stuff in your life that you look back on, it feels like it was like a dream. If you look at it like, did that really happen? Like it happened so quickly, and like in the moment you're trying to process and like get this fish back in the water, make sure your photos are good, make sure your video's good, and like you let it go, and then you step back and you go, oh shit, that happened. And then like so I didn't get to witness somebody else catching it, so the whole time the fish is on the line, I'm processing what I need to do to make sure we don't lose it. So I'm not getting to watch it happen. You're in the moment, and then it only happened one time, and we were only fishing for 10 minutes. So like the whole thing it happened and it was over so quickly it doesn't even feel real. So
right.
I think we'll be able to talk Steve into that. I want you to go check out Snake River Canyon. That area is pretty gnarly too.
Yeah.
So that whole thing could probably tie in together, but catching them on surf rod would definitely be a fun thing to try. But that's yeah, dude, that should be pretty fun stuff. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the temperatures, unfortunately. We've been like, it's February right now, and we've been blessed with like 60 and 70. It's going to be like 84 here tomorrow.
Oh, it's going to be like 90 this weekend where I'm at. I'm like, dang, it's officially back.
Yeah, well,
this is going to get a lot harder.
Yeah.
This Lanai stuff.
You're going to be.
I'm already like right now. I'm like, yeah, dang.
Yeah. Well, I'm leaving once we get done recording this. I'm leaving to go brown trout fishing for the next couple days. So it's like 84 and raining tomorrow, and then like it's gonna immediately go back into the 40s. So by Monday I'll probably be sick. But I don't know. But that's the one part about the stuff being in Idaho in March I'm not 100% stoked on, because we're finally getting into some warm temperatures here. We're gonna fly out there. It's gonna be like a high of 50. It's probably gonna.
Oh, I know. I can deal with 50. If it gets to a point where it's like snowy and ice, I struggle with that. But I'm sure I can make do.
I asked Steve. I'm like, what are your temperatures? He's like, it could be 50. It could be 15. I'm like, cool.
Oh Lord.
So the very first time I was out there with Steve, the first trip I made. I packed a wetsuit because I couldn't afford a dry suit. I had a neoprene wetsuit. It was 70. No, it was almost 90 degrees when I left Richmond on a Thursday. And when I got to Idaho the first morning, I think that Friday morning we started fishing, it was like 11 degrees. There was like a 70-degree difference in temperature in like 24 hours. It was, I wasn't primed for that at all. It was like fishing in a freezer the whole time.
That will like shock your body.
Yeah, it was like, I was working on people's decks and like doing all this exterior work on this house, and then like I get on a plane and like the next morning I'm trying to catch fish and it's 11 degrees out. It was terrible. It was so cold. But then you got 5 layers on. You're trying to paddle a kayak and fight a fish. I'm like, I don't know. It was nuts. But I'm looking forward to going back out to Idaho. That should be fun. And if it's anything like the last couple trips, we should do pretty well, I think. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but it seems that if you can get the bait, you can get the fish. So
yeah,
I think we'll do okay. But so yeah, I guess we'll expand on. We kind of got into our origin stories last episode. We started talking about the show a little bit, and I think episode 1 of the show is the Alligator Gar trip, and it's probably out of all the stuff we've filmed and all the places we've went so far, it was by far the most like tumultuous or I don't. It was just such
that one had all the varying degrees of.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to like process all that. It got to a point where like the mind just became numb.
It was just like it got to a point like everything good. You're like, all right, well, what bad is going to happen for us to have to pay for this?
Right. I know.
So I think what we'll do, we'll kind of just jump into that trip, and we've talked about it a bunch personally, but I think we'll kind of,
right.
for the listeners and the viewers, we'll sort of relive the trip and sort of bring back all of the crazy crap that happened. See if we can dig it out of our memory and just sort of talk about it. But so episode 1 of Have Rods Will Travel is the Alligator Gar trip. And essentially I towed my truck in John boat, 17-foot John boat with a jet motor, from Virginia to Texas. And David flew from Florida up to Texas to meet me there. And we essentially had a week to try to get some alligator gar on film. And I think that was when the show was, at least for me, it was in its infancy on like what we were actually going to do with it. I didn't know if it was going to be like a one-off episode thing where we try to do alligator gar and white sturgeon together. I didn't really have a full thing figured out. So we were just kind of filming to maybe see what we were going to do. But the first night, David gets off the plane, and I pick him up from the airport with boat in tow. Actually, I got to go back before that. On the way down, I had an alternator go bad on my truck, which I replaced, and my boat trailer, the tire blew out at like 4 a.m. in Louisiana. And this is right after, I think, Hurricane Harvey, or not Hurricane Harvey, maybe Ida, whatever one like hit Louisiana.
Yeah.
So like I slept in the back of my truck on the way down in like a Louisiana rest stop. The DOT dude gave me crap because I was in like the wrong area of the like rest stop. I was parked with the cars instead of the tractor trailers.
You're not resting in the right spot.
Yeah. Everything's one big parking lot, but you parked in the wrong area. So like I went to the other side, and of course there's no empty spots. So I'm like, whatever. I'm just going to keep driving. So I'm driving across Louisiana. Maybe an hour later, it's like 4 a.m. Trailer tire blows out. I'm like, great. Okay. I get out. I'm changing my trailer tire. I get back in the truck, start driving. And the whole trip down, I was reminding myself, don't get to Louisiana and be low on gas. Do not do that. Get gas before you get into Louisiana. Well, with everything that happened, having to do the alternator, not getting any sleep, having to change a tire on the side of the road, I kind of like forgot about all that. And as I'm entering into like the middle of Louisiana on I-20, it occurred to me that I'm running low on gas, and as I'm running low on gas, I'm entering into the path of where this hurricane went through.
Yeah.
So it was pure
gas.
No, pure destruction everywhere, and there's no places to get gas anywhere. So literally I had to pull over on just this like desolate road. I was trying like all the gas stations I could find. They were all caution taped off. Nobody had gas. I pulled over, and it occurred to me that I had gas in my boat motor tank. I was like, okay, I might have enough gas to get to like civilization. I was like halfway across. I had like 6 gallons of gas maybe. So I'm pouring the gas from my exterior like boat tank, gas tank, into my truck, and as I do this Cajun dude, straight out of Bobby Boucher, like comes up, and I don't know what he said to me, but the word gas was in there, and the best I could decipher what this guy was saying is he was trying to buy the gas that I was trying to put in my truck. So it was either that or he was trying to like kidnap me and put me in his dungeon. I don't know. Dude, Cajuns
He's probably this nice, earnest man that was trying to help you, and you just assumed the worst.
Dude, Cajuns
Get out of here, a-hole.
Dude, Cajuns are a special breed. I don't know. All I know is this dude was trying to talk to me, and I was very agitated. But I ended up getting the gas in my truck, driving across the state, and as I'm like running on fumes, I hit civilization with like gas again. I fill up. Ended up making it. It was probably the lowest on fuel I've ever been and the tightest line that I've ever walked, and I'd never want to have to do that again. But ended up picking you up from the airport, and that was just the drive down. So like it I don't know, man.
That is a long drive from Virginia. Like how many hours total is that?
21.
So you're destined to find some kind of problem making a drive that long.
Yeah, I mean, if you like rent a vehicle, then you're probably good. But I was driving from there to Texas to Idaho and then back. So
yeah,
I had already like went through all of my truck, like replaced universal joints, replaced all the breakable, or so I thought, all the breakable parts on my truck. And like I was confident that everything would be okay. The only thing I didn't switch out was my alternator or in my four-wheel drive axles, which were the two things that it ended up breaking on that trip. So, but yeah, I'll let you expand from when I picked you up. That way we don't want to run out of steam here. I pick up from like when I picked you up from the airport and like expand on that.
Oh, I should have like read more about this trip. It's not that I'm losing it, but it's like I don't want to miss anything. But it got to a point where too much crap happened, so I'm going to end up forgetting. So interject if you realize I'm forgetting key details, because I didn't have an exciting travel in. I just flew in, and then there you were.
I think that's probably why like our demeanors were how they were, because you were like you were like concerned, and I was already like, all right, this is just how it's going.
Yeah,
like, I had already settled into, we're gonna just get our ass kicked this whole time. Okay, I don't know, but I
just wanted to go straight to catching bait. I'm like, we're not going, like, we're not stopping anywhere. Like, we're going directly to the waters, like, and immediately, like, from an airplane straight to the water, straight into fishing, because there's no time to waste on anything else. I don't even think we said hello. It wasn't even pleasant greetings. We're just like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. Well, like, it's funny because I hadn't slept in 2 days. So, like, all I wanted, I'm like, David, please, let's just go to the hotel and chill tonight. We're not going to and I could see why you wanted to just get started fishing, because you're good to go. I'm like, I've thoroughly gotten my ass kicked to this point. I'm like, please, just let me sleep for a little bit. But no, we got there and tried to catch bait. It didn't work, but I don't know.
I done it enough times and knew that the bait thing, I knew that was going to be like our big, like, it's like sort of just that monster that looms that you're going to at some point have to contend with. So I'm like, you know what, I don't want to be thinking about it all night. I don't want to be stressing about it, like making a stop in between. I just want to go straight into facing that beast down, because I was thinking, like, we're going to go out there and maybe our best odds at catching bait will actually be in the darkness. When and then we'll just go from there. And I thought I fished that spot several times in the past, and I was like, this is an easy one. Like, we'll be able to bang out a few carp and buffalo, and we'll be good for a week. But
I also made like kind of the fatal error of not bringing a cast net, because I was on the fence about it the whole time, and I was bringing so much shit to begin with. I'm like, I don't want to bring a cast net and then have to take that cast net to Idaho and across the country. Mm-hmm. Like, I need the valuable space. I'm like, we'll be fine. If we need a cast net, we'll buy one when we get down there. I didn't know all their cast nets were like 4 foot.
3 feet. Yeah, a little tiny, like
It's like not even worth
The ones that
spending your money.
absolutely positively do not work.
Yeah, you're trying to like snipe like one buffalo at a time with it. But
Yeah.
no, we sat out there and we tried to catch bait, and I was pretty much dragging ass the whole time. And then those like wild, mangy dogs kept trying to like ambush us on the bank. I don't know if you remember that or not. Probably
They
not.
wanted food. Yeah, I remember the dogs. I didn't
Yeah,
remember until you mentioned it.
yeah, they were
But
like stalking us the entire time.
I just
But
remember the state of alarm when about the first hour passed without getting a single nibble. I'm like, man,
yeah,
this is not good. If
yeah,
this is an indicator on how this is going to be. And then I was like
yeah,
doing the math in my mind. I was like, if we're only getting like one bite for every 3 hours, you know, you know,
yeah,
take the three, carry the five,
yeah,
that's three divided by. I'm like, we're going to be lucky if we have 3 fish after 12 hours. I was like,
yeah.
well, I mean, this trip's over if that happens.
I don't. That type of thing never even enters my brain. It's just like we're either catching or we're not. Once we start, we'll continue. But it's just like I don't know. You get to that point where you're not catching anything, and you're like, all right, we're in the wrong spot. We're doing something wrong. But regardless, I think I talked you into like leaving and regrouping in the morning.
Yeah,
So
we did not catch one at night. I do remember
no,
that. So at some point we were gone, and then at some point we were back there.
yeah. Well, this is getting into my favorite part of this entire thing. I think is we stopped to get gas on the way out. We were driving to the hotel. We were fishing around Lake Livingston trying to get bait. So we're in that area of Texas. I think it's like Huntsville or something. We're in like the town of Huntsville. And we walk into this gas station. Mind you, it's like 10 o'clock, something like that, 11. I haven't slept in like 36 hours at this point. And there's some dude in there, and I'm minding my own business. I'm just here to get a Red Bull, get some gas, get to the hotel. And this dude like has, and I'm not knocking anybody here, but he has like all of the random gas station fishing options. So he has like
Yeah.
like the wire like double dropper like fishing rig and like the lead he bought there and like bobber. I mean, just the whole thing you find at the gas station. No big deal. Like you're doing your thing. I'm minding my own business. Everything's cool. You're clearly you got a plan. Like I'm not hating on you. I go to pump gas. This guy comes out and he immediately like, how much you want for that boat? I'm like, I'm not selling you my boat. I'm like, haha, like just kind of laughing it off. He's very clearly serious. It's like, how much you want for that boat? I'm like, I'm not selling it. Like we're down here fishing.
The best part of all this was my vantage point from the passenger seat watching all this happen because I feel like I spotted that guy maybe even before you did. If not, I saw the twinkle in his eye when he spotted you.
Yeah.
And like I immediately knew that guy wants to talk to Josh.
Yeah.
Like
and
that's one thing about the locals around there. Like, boy, good God, are they happy to like approach and start conversation? Yeah. I'm like, oh God, oh he's coming to talk. Oh poor, I'm not getting out. I'm not part of this conversation.
That's where our personalities differ because like I'll be friendly and I mean you're a nice guy. I'm not saying anything like that. It's just like I'll do a little small talk on pumping the gas and whatever, just trying to lighten the mood. And you will completely avoid the person, which is probably the better option. It was clearly the better option in this case. But he's like, "How much you want for that boat?" I'm like, it's not for sale. Like we drove down from Virginia. We're gonna go after some alligator gar. He's like, "Oh, alligator gar. Oh yeah." Well,
that was your first mistake. You're always supposed to lie about what you're actually chasing.
Well, I was
anything that bites,
I was surprised that he like acknowledged it because most people are like, "Why are you fishing for those?" He took the other approach. He was like, "Oh, well, what do you?" It immediately turned into interrogation. He's like, well, "What are you using for bait?" I'm like, we're gonna use some carp. Oh, that's not gonna work. You need live goldfish or live mullet. Like they won't eat it.
Live mullet. Yep, it has to be alive.
They won't eat it unless it's live. I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, you need these rigs. Do you have these the double hook, like gas station rigs? I'm like, no. He's like, you need these. You gotta have them under a float. He was saying some ridiculous.
Every single thing that you had was wrong.
Yeah.
Like he systematically broke down everything you described and had a reason why you were wrong.
Yeah, I can't even remember all of it at this exact moment, but it was just like trying to buy my boat, got mad because I wouldn't sell it to him. Figured out we were from out of state, which was probably where the majority of this animosity came from. Like,
Right, yeah.
Where are you fishing? Oh no, you got to be fishing up in this area, and then tried to tell me the bait was wrong and all this. I'm like, it was just like this weird interaction that I'm having on like no sleep. So I'm like, okay, I'm just trying to appease this dude,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm like, all right, man, well, good luck, being friendly. All right, man, good luck. I don't need luck. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, what is
that was the best. He was getting he was like randomly getting kind of confrontation. I felt like a sense like he was sort of trying to lure you into a trap of like,
yeah,
I don't know, like a testing your nerves.
My nerves were shot. I was like, I stepped back. I'm like, did I do something? Because I was like not operating properly due to lack of sleep. I'm like, did I say something to piss that dude off? I just get in the truck. I'm like, dude, that was the weirdest shit ever.
Yeah, when you're way out in the middle of absolute nowhere, that part of the country, like, and somebody asks you what you're fishing, if you are honest, like you shouldn't have been, like you're supposed to be dishonest or like super over the top vague to give them the
whatever
hint
bites.
Yeah, anything that bites. Yeah. But as soon as you mention Alligator Gar, that conversation is going to go one of three ways. Yeah. It's going to be the why the hell are you doing that for? It's going to be the know-it-all guy who's going to tell you all the ways to how to do it with
the world's greatest gar fisherman.
Right.
World's really greatest alligator gar guy.
Bizarre and obscure methods. Or it's going to be the one that's got these wild and crazy legendary stories.
Yeah.
Of the 14-footer next to the John boat.
I think we had all of those on this trip, actually. But
that was just the first crazy guy that we dealt with. It got worse from there.
Oh my god, it definitely got more colorful from there. But so yeah, we left that super like confrontational dude. Went to the hotel, like got a little bit of sleep, came back the next morning, and like immediately. I had never fished. This is Lake Livingston Dam. I don't think it's a huge shocker to anybody that's there or anybody that's listening if you know where that's at. But like. I was surprised at how many people fish below that dam and the way in which they are fishing. Like we launched the boat and we run up towards the dam thinking we'd like get into some buffalo and carp. And like as we're going up, we're passing people that are like chest deep in the water, like waiting.
Oh no! Every time I've ever been there, it's been that way. People just floating around, swimming with the rods above their heads.
I've never seen that. It was such a cluster. It's like
I only wanted to go there for bait because I know that it's pure hell down there.
Yeah, I had been down there before, but I had never experienced anything like that. I don't even know like I don't know if white bass were running. I don't know what they were even fishing for. There's like nothing there, I don't think. But it was some sort of run because those dudes were like fishing up at like the current break.
Yeah, the white bass is the big one that they go up there for, I think.
Yeah, I don't know, but
they weren't even releasing water. It was like as low as I've ever seen it. It was stagnant. There's just not a lot of life in the water.
Yeah, it was. That part of the trip was like everything was a new it's like a new version of the Twilight Zone. It's like you're weaving in and out of these people that are in the water with your boat, and we ended up catching one common carp, which like we caught it fairly quickly, I think. So it was like okay, cool, like we're in business, we're gonna start catching fish, and I don't know, man. We messed around and like went down river. And immediately I sucked up like 900 yards of like braid into my outboard, which I didn't. I must have done that there. I don't know where else I would have done
it. It had to have been because you think of how much fishing line and rigging gear and just random crap that was on the bank there. It was the whole area was just like a litter pile.
Yeah.
But I think that we had gotten to a point once you caught that one carp, we had one piece of bait, and it's like, I don't know, we made the decision to almost like sacrifice it so we could like rejuvenate the optimism tanks. Or we're like, well, let's just head down river and like gamble on our luck with this one carp and chunk it up and try something. Because like we're going on to two, or it was either the third. We were going on to the third day, I think. Or I don't know if you want to count the first day of like landing on the plane as day one.
Yeah,
But
that
then
was
day two is when we get that carp, and then it was that we're coming down, like the sun is setting, and
yeah.
we're looking at potentially waking up on the third.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess with nothing.
Yeah.
I was like, we're
So
gonna have to start doing something different. This is getting bad.
yeah. So we go down river, we throw out a bunch of corn as we're like carp or as we're gar fishing. I think we caught a couple. You did, and I don't remember catching one
Yeah,
down there. I think you caught like two, and then we came back and we caught a couple of like grass carp, so that was good. Like we starting to feel a little rejuvenation
yeah,
there.
that was big. You caught the carp. You caught the carp. I didn't catch any bait.
Right.
That
Well,
was big. We got the think you caught two like good sized carp that were good for like 4 or 5 baits. Like each of them was good for multiple baits.
yeah, we had that one common that we used up fishing down there, and then we had those two grassers that were probably like 10-pound grass. Like they were good. It's a good bait.
Yeah.
But we ended up running back to the ramp, and this was the linchpin of, I don't even know if that's the right descriptive. This was the crossroads that we entered into, where the trip could have
Well,
ended.
it was the first real swing in a momentum because you got to think we'd just gone a day and a
Yeah.
half with no bait at all. We finally get over the hump and we get bait, and we'd even caught a couple of alligator gar, and like you sense that there was a shift in momentum going in our favor.
Yeah.
We caught a couple alligator gar. Now we got bait in the cooler. Now we're heading towards the ramp to prepare for the next day with a little bit of positivity behind us.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like Trinity River, like you don't usually want to be out after dark due to like how much stuff's in the water. Like you don't want to run up on any logs or anything, mess your stuff up. So we're going back. We're gonna go to the hotel, get a game plan for the morning. Like we got bait. This is great. Everything's going great. Like everything's going great. We're gonna start catching fish now. Yeah, we wasted a day and a half, but no big deal.
Yeah.
So I send David up to the truck, and he like below Lake Livingston, it's like a sandbox. That's like the only way to describe it. And then like the sandbox, they've like put concrete on top of it to make a ramp. It's the most like
Oh yeah.
like hodgepodge thing ever. And that's
It
just
is
kind of
rough terrain.
yeah, it's just kind of how Texas is. Like they can't put legitimate ramps anywhere because like major floods, it just washes
And like
it out.
down the bank from where the dam is, you can see old ramps that
Yeah.
fell apart and like just crumbled and fell apart. So they just built another one next to it.
Yeah.
And then that one falls apart and they just build another one next to it.
Yeah. You'd
All
think
these like
there'd-
old ramps that screwed up.
you'd think
Build
there'd be like
another one.
a better way to go about it. I don't know. But
Yeah.
anyway, so David hops in the truck and he's like getting it lined up on the ramp, and then he hops out. He's like, truck's making a noise. It sounds terrible. I'm like, it's fine. Just and like he's like, no, it's like there's a problem. I'm like, what could this possibly
I'm like,
be?
I ain't tearing this truck up. I think
I'm like,
too late.
I'm like, I don't. What could this possibly be? Like, I've replaced everything on it. Well, I didn't. I didn't replace my CV axles because you normally don't need to mess with those things. I use my 4-wheel drive like twice a year, maybe. So they're usually good. Well, I go up and the CV axle has exploded. It is just, think of like a joint, and it is just untwisted itself. So like part of it's attached to the gear, like the transfer case on the truck, and the other part is just flopping around attached to the tire. Well, needless to say, you can't drive the truck with that flinging around hitting stuff. So like we're basically dead in the water, like no pun intended. We're screwed. I'm like, okay, well and at this point it's summertime, so I think it was like 10 o'clock at night when this happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it got dark till like 9:30. Like we are screwed. I'm like, I don't have a way to fix that. Like it's it's
Yeah.
I can't like MacGyver something to get us out of that. I'm like, dude, I think we're just screwed. Like I don't.
Yeah. That one goes so far beyond simply having an immobilized vehicle. Like it goes so far beyond like, oh, my car's broke down on one leg of the journey.
Yeah.
It's like we're in the absolute positive middle of nowhere. You're not parked on the asphalt. You're parked in sand, deep sand on a slope. We don't really know anybody anywhere within a reasonable distance that can possibly come help. You ain't walking out of there.
Yeah.
Like that was as horrible of a situation
Yeah.
as you can possibly be. And it was a very real like possibility that like this whole trip is over.
Yeah.
It's done. We got all this way and it's finished.
Well, it was like if we had any one thing not go the way, like if it had happened during the day, okay, you can call a tow truck. If it happened before AutoZone closed, okay, you can, something. It literally happened at the worst time in the worst spot, and you couldn't drive. You couldn't even drive the truck to town. Like you're just dead in the water. I'm like, oh shit. Like I don't. Normally I can like think my way out. Like okay, if I do this,
Yeah.
I can fix it. Like no big deal. It'll get me to town. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, the only way to do it is to replace the CV axle, and I didn't have one of those hiding anywhere. So
Yeah.
it just so happened as I'm like trying to figure out what to do, my buddy Brian texts me, and Brian lives down there. And Brian knew I was coming down, but like, I didn't think that we were gonna link up or anything. He's got a lot going on. I had you there, so it's not. We were on a time crunch. I just didn't think I was gonna see him this trip. He's like, how's it going? I'm like, not good. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we're broke down below Livingston Dam. And like immediately, it just show you the type of person Brian is. He like immediately calls me. I'm pretty sure he called me. And I know he called me. I think that's what happened next. But he's like, well, do you want me to come help you? I'm like, well, Brian, I don't even know how to help myself right now. I don't know what you're like. I don't know what to do. And I've replaced CV axles on my truck, so I know what needs to happen. I just don't know how we're going to do it right then. He's like, well, I can drive there, and I can help you get your boat out of the water, and then I'll take you into town to a hotel, and then we'll just fix it the next day. I'm like, okay, well, you're like an hour and a half away, I think. I'm like, are you sure you want to do it? Because it's already like 10:30 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, Brian... This shows the type of guy he is. Gets in his truck, drives all the way out. He could have just left us there to sleep in our car that night. You know what I mean? Like, but drives all the way out, helps get the boat out of the water. Like, we put the trailer on his truck. We get the boat out of the water. I managed to, like, inch the truck up and out of the way so I didn't piss off any fishermen the next morning.
Yeah.
He takes us to a motel, and, like, he tows my boat, like, with him, like, heads on out. And, like, is coming back the next morning, and just the whole time, like, I'm like, my truck's gonna get broken into because it's not like the safest area in the world, especially like just leaving your shit.
It has Virginia tags on it. This Virginia boy don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, Virginia tags, like a bunch of stuff in it. I'm like, I'm gonna come back and this thing's gonna be just ravaged through. No, Brian comes, picks us up the next morning, like. We get down there. I get the CV axle from AutoZone. Like, everything's good. All I have to do is swap this out. Well, we get down there, and sure enough, like, the castle nut, like the main axle nut, I can't, for the life of me, get it loose. It is seized on there. So, like, I broke 2 separate wrenches trying to get it off. I'm like, what else? Like, what else could, like, just anything else could go my way. It'd be great. Well, we ended up having to go back into town. Like, we made like 2 separate trips into town. And David at this point is like, I don't know what was your thoughts in that moment?
It was extreme guilt because I look over there with envious eyes at you and Brian, and it's like y'all clearly like I'm just worthless when it comes to like mechanical engineering and like fixing things. So I'm like, what's my role in this? Like, I'm just like,
you're doing great.
The positivity guy. Like,
yeah.
And I'm not even good at that. I'm like the biggest negative Nancy you've ever met. But I don't know. I'm sitting here like, for me, it's just the battle of like keeping the negative thought in. But I'm like, when you look at that, like when you look at a dire circumstance like that, and then you think of all the money that you just spent and all the planning that went into like even getting out there and like, and like the reality of having to turn tail and go back home completely and utterly destroyed and defeated is like knocking at the back door. It's like, damn, this is brutal. Like, what can I do to somehow be constructive and helpful in this situation?
Yeah.
But I just and like think about it too. Like the Brian thing is crazy. Like, what was the alternative if you had not taken the time to like network in the fishing community and build that relationship? I don't know, a year or however long y'all had known each other. But like, if wasn't there, I think like what what would have become of us?
Brian has saved my ass on like a couple of those trips. Because it's so far from Virginia. Like, by the time I'm down there, if something goes wrong, like, I don't have options. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I think one trip we made down, we took Harley's SUV as opposed to my truck. And, like, as we're entering Texas, the roof rack with the kayaks just fly off. Like, it just flies off the car. We drove 19 hours. We got to the Louisiana-Texas state line. We're now on the back roads. We just got to we're almost there. And the way her car's set up, you can't like nose strap the boats because it's just all plastic up there. You can't like do anything. So like we hit a crazy storm, like headwind, and it just blew the rack and everything just peeled off of her car and like flew up into the air and like landed in a ditch. And we ended up having a whole ordeal.
At least it didn't kill the people behind you.
I know. Luckily, there was nobody. It was just us on the road. Oh, that would have been terrible. But it wasn't like anybody's fault. Like I had a testament to how well I strapped these down. It landed in the exact formation in which I had strapped it down. Nothing moved. Like the kayaks were strapped, the bar, like everything was in the exact place, and the only thing, like the nose of my boat had a little scratch on it where it hit the ground. It was such a sheer stroke of luck. But that trip, Brian helped me out, like got me some bait, got us catching fish. That was 2016. That trip is the trip where I filmed that like viral alligator gar video of it like head shaking and stuff. The reason why we got that on camera is we fished this one river for like 4 days and got nothing. And I messaged Brian. I'm like, I'm not catching anything. Like what? And we ended up going to the Trinity. And it was like the last day, and we caught that fish at the last hour, the last spot, the last day, and it was just It's I don't know, man. Brian's a special dude. It just the way those trips happen, it's just something bad's gonna happen. It's just how you respond to it. Yeah. And that was, I think, all three of us in that situation were just trying to figure out how we can best help.
All I know is at some point during that process, while y'all two were working, and I'm standing there watching, and I could sort of sense that like you were having a breakthrough, like it started to, like I'm like, okay, there's a chance they can fix it. Like at that point, immediately I was like, well, this is great, but it does not change the fact that we don't have bait.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, we do have rods and we do have bait, and I ain't got nothing but time. So I'm like, well, hell, I guess I'm gonna get back to trying to figure the bait thing out.
Yeah. Well, so as we figured out, we had to go back into town to get another tool, and like as we're doing that is when you started your like MacGyvering of, and I'll let you tell that whole story. That
right.
Anyway.
Well, it's a lot of that was spawned out of boredom. Right. It was. I mean, hell, I elected to stay with the vehicle kind of for the same reason. Like we didn't want to leave it, sitting there and where people can mess with it. Yeah. And so, y'all went into town like, all right, well, I'll just stay here and watch the car because we got all our gear here.
Yeah.
But then, like, you walk the banks. I'm just walking around kicking rocks and skipping rocks and, like, drawing my name in the sand.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm going to do the good sportsman thing and kind of start cleaning some of this trash up. So I'm, like, walking around, and there's like a whole fishing rods laying on the ground, hundreds and hundreds of yards of fishing line, thousands of hooks. I'm like, there is a whole tackle shop out here.
Yeah.
Like everything, like you could never get stranded there and die. You've got all the survival gears within 10 feet of you.
It's like the land of broken toys for fishing rods and stuff.
And everyone's out there. Well, everyone's out there cast netting. And like we alluded to earlier, the water level was way down.
Yeah.
So that had exposed all the rocks and all the rocks that people had gotten their nets stuck on over over centuries of time. Right. It was just nets as far as the eye could see all over the place. And that one net that I ended up picking up was like the 10th net that I had picked up.
Oh yeah.
I looked at it, I'm like, well, this one's not even that bad. Like the dummy just broke like a couple of well, never mind. The one that I picked up was horrible.
Yeah.
Like beyond, I don't know why I was thinking it wasn't that bad. Yeah, I missed the mark on that part of my recollection. No, so the net that I found the mesh was completely separated from
Yeah.
the rim of weighted rope. It was just there's one little section still connected. The rest of it
Hmm.
completely had torn off. And like
Yeah.
all of the little support cables all broken.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I don't have anything to do. This is just going to be like my little project. I'm going to
Yeah.
sew this thing back together and maybe we'll have a net. So
Right.
y'all were gone for a prolonged period of time.
Oh, yeah.
So I just grabbed all of the fishing line that was there. I think I grabbed like 200 yards of braided line that I'd found and like a random pair of scissors and just started stitching. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to rebuild a whole entire cast net. And I don't know,
Yeah.
but I think by the time y'all got back, I was like 90% of the way done fixing this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very much like you start to feel things shifting. It's like, all right, like right about the time you got that fixed and like went on the bait hunt, we were like coming back with the proper tools and like I finally got the like nut undone, which was like the biggest challenge of all. Because what like once you get that off, it's pretty like so I've done my CV axles multiple times. Like it's not supposed to be that difficult. You just pop it out, pop a new one in. But we were having issues, and like we came back, got the nut off. You got like went on the hunt. It was like okay, like the best part about it is like as we lowered the truck back to the ground after it was fixed, I look
Yeah.
over and you're like marching back with the cast net and like a stringer full of buffalo. It was
Yeah.
just, it was the best
It was
timing.
like perfectly synchronized timing. Couldn't have planned it any better.
How did you go about catching those things? Because I didn't get.
Well, that was the thing. Is like whenever I was walking around while y'all were still gone, I was walking the banks just looking at the water. There's buffalo everywhere. I couldn't catch them.
Yeah.
So like this sucks. If I had a cast net, I could catch these things. So then I put that one together. But you just seen them like behind every current break, like every rock, every limb. There was like schools of small little buffalo. So like it was like sight casting with the cast net on them.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't too hard. But yeah, I was just waiting around and seeing groups of them.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember how many I got on the stringer. It was like more than a half dozen of them. And you got to think each one represents 3 baits. I'm like, we have a week's worth of bait right here,
ready to go.
So then it was like the stringer got too heavy, like for me to be pull, and the stringer that I found got too heavy. Everything was just things that I picked up off the ground. So I attached all these fish to a stringer somebody had left on the ground.
Yeah.
And then that thing got too heavy to pull behind me. I'm like, well, I got to go pop this off I got to go drop this off in the cooler. And then I was like, I'm walking over a hill and they're like over my shoulder, like a big mass of fish.
Look like
and then
Santa Claus.
I see y'all with the jack lowering the truck back down.
Yeah.
And I come up holding the bait.
It was the perfect
go time.
I don't know if we got that on film or not, but we were so fixated on getting if we don't catch any fish, there's no reason to film any of this. So we're so fixated on getting everything fixed. I don't know if we got that on camera or not, but that's this net in the background. I saved the net. Like I've had it for a year and a half.
I knew it
now.
was laying in like your front yard for about a year after that. So.
Yeah, well, I kept it. It was such a I don't know. I try to save things from trips. Like normally it'll be like rocks or like a fish, like something I can write on and be like, this is from here. And like that net, it got us out of that. You and that net got us out of that not having bait situation. It represented such a crossroads in that trip and like what might happen from there on out in that trip and like the filming and just everything. I'm like, I can't just throw this net away. So it sat in my yard for like a year, and then I finally put the podcast studio together, and I'm like, perfect. I'll just hang it up back there. So it finally stopped smelling terrible like 2 weeks ago.
There was a lot of things that like happened, and then like the remedy for the problems. If like we wouldn't had that one solution, there were no other solutions. Like if we wouldn't have had Brian come out there, trips over. If I wouldn't have found an old raggedy old cast net, maybe we would have never gotten bait.
Yeah, it was.
We would have just used our newly fixed vehicle to get back to the airport and be able to go home.
Yeah, it was. So. It was. I forgot a part of it. As I'm in AutoZone, Brian took David and I to AutoZone so I could buy the CV axle. Like as I'm inside, they're out just getting to know each other in the truck.
Oh yeah, I can't remember where we encountered that guy.
Yeah. This is it. I'm gonna let you take it from here, but I'm in AutoZone trying to buy a CV axle, and David and Brian are in Brian's truck outside. I don't know what's happening, but I come out to hear this part of the story.
Yeah,
so
I don't know. I'm like the ultimate like. I can read like I'm a self-prescribed like body language like analyst.
Yeah.
And, like so I can like observe somebody be like, yeah, I don't want to talk to that guy.
Right.
Yeah, that guy's a weirdo. I don't want nothing to do with him.
Right.
Which was seemed to be the majority of the people that I saw. I don't want to talk to strangers. Maybe it's a character flaw. I mean, I need to be more social. But I see this guy who has you can always see him. They take a very like keen interest in your presence. Like this guy looked over, like in the way he was looking, I'm like, oh no, he's coming. He's gonna come. He's gonna talk to us. Like here it comes. He just looks so interested in me and Brian. And Brian had his window down. I'm like, Brian, roll that window up. He's coming. I was like, oh no, he's gonna come talk. So this guy comes over. I mean, you can look at it as these are very friendly people, or you can look at it as they're like intrusive. It's a little bit of both. Because none of them were. That one guy was a little rude, but this guy comes over. He puts his arm in the window, like it's sweaty, greasy arms in the car. I'm like, ah, man. And I don't remember how the conversation even got started, but Brian engaged him in conversation. I'm just like the grumpy, like a-hole in the back seat, like I ain't talking to nobody.
Right.
But just like trying to not look at him. I don't want him to ask me questions,
Right.
So then he asked, well, what are y'all fishing for? I'm like, Brian, don't tell him.
Right.
Anything that bites. And then, I think at some point we made the fatal mistake of saying alligator gar. I'm like, we have just opened Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Like, here comes, what's going to come out of his mouth? It's going to be something crazy. And he's like, well, the best thing to catch them with, right? I'm like, this is going to be gold. I should have pulled out my phone and started recording. The best way to catch them, right? I was like, whatever happens from here on out is going to be completely and utterly glorious and ridiculous all the same. Like, there's no way this wild and crazy dude is going to have anything constructive to add to like what we're doing.
Right.
And so he says, and I'm like, this is going to be, what he said, I don't even know how to put into words my initial thought. But he's like, the best bait for them things, right? I was like, well, live mullet. Like, what is it? The last guy said live mullet. He goes, blackbirds. I'm like, blackbirds.
It's like the last thing.
So finally I spoke. There's a whole point up until this point I hadn't said a word. And I looked over at him. I'm like, did you just say blackbirds? He's like, yeah, blackbirds. So the thing you do is you take all the feathers of them off. So I'm like, so it really doesn't matter what color they are. Yeah. Because you're taking all the feathers off anyway.
Yeah.
He's like, you stick a hook through them and throw them out on the surface. He's like, Gar, love eating blackbirds off the top of the water. I'm like, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. This is a big risk. But I'm going to guess you have never done that.
Yeah.
You've never seen that.
It makes you wonder, like, why was that in that person's brain? Like,
because I think he knew that it was going to elicit such a curious response that it was going to like make the conversation last longer.
Yeah.
Because he was waiting for that. Well, what do you mean blackbirds? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's like now the conversation is in full snowball effect, and we ain't getting out of this thing.
I had to think of that on the fly. Is like that's
birds.
I would if you had a gun to my head and said pick the most random thing you could say, like that wouldn't even be in my brain. Like that makes me go, okay, like where did that guy hear about this? Like who? Just the chain of events from when that dude said that to you on back. Like when did that ever happen?
I don't know. And we had too much courtesy because we entertained the conversation, and like realistically, we should have said, buddy, you are talking out your ass right now. Yeah. That is a lie. All of this story is made up, and I'm done with you. But we were too nice and polite to do that. Well, that's very interesting. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but then it would just be you and Brian sitting in a truck, and we'd never have a story about it.
Yeah.
Now we have the infamous blackbird story to tell from here until the
You
end of
always
time.
don't make eye contact. Roll up all windows and
Yeah.
close your eyes. Just don't talk.
I don't know. I don't. I'll talk to people, but after a certain point, it's just guys like that you struggle because it's like you're making this up right now. You are lying to
Right.
my face right
Well,
now.
how do you react? How do you respond to that with rational thought? Like
You double down and go, "Yep, yeah, you're right. You're right." Actually, I have better luck with cardinals. So,
yeah, Redbirds is the ticket.
juvenile bald eagles actually work the best. So,
I was like,
I don't know.
oh,
But anyway, so all of that went down. We got the truck fixed. We bid our farewells to Brian, and we set out to a section of river that Brian and I had actually fished in the past. And it was just like you could feel the momentum shift. It's like we have no reason not to catch him now. We have bait, we have working boat, working truck, everything's fine. And we get to the water, and like the very first thing we see is this monster, like 10-point buck in like full velvet, just chilling on the side of the riverbank. And that we hadn't went upriver 100 yards. It was just like it just crazy to see.
yeah.
And then on top of that, we hadn't went 100 yards because we couldn't go very fast. Because apparently, what I was learning is the more weight you put in a jet boat, the slower it goes. So
I felt like seeing that buck was like the physical representation of us, like shedding all the crazy, like I don't know. We're out there like, in a public boat ramp, loaded with people walking all around the water. We're encountering crazy people. We're dealing with having to go into town. So it's like I felt like once we hit that buck that was sitting there, it was sort of like, all right, we're finally out where we're supposed to be. Like we're finally beyond all the distractions of the artificial world, and like we're in the real territory. Like we're in the wild now.
Yeah. What was that, and just getting away from everybody, I think was the biggest. It was shedding the bad energy at that point. It was like, okay, like you felt like for the first time in the trip something good might happen. So we get upriver. I don't even remember what the first fish we caught was. Like from that point on.
You caught the first one, and it was a big one. It wasn't. Is that right? I think you definitely caught the first one, and I thought it was the one where you're laying like kind of like alongside it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's the photo on the website and like all my social media and stuff. So like, I think we may have caught some smaller ones, but in very small, like inconsequential.
You
fish.
definitely had caught the first one because it was sort of like, well, I managed to catch a couple small ones the day before, so it's like you got to get. Got to get on the board. So regardless of what rod even goes off, I think for a little bit we were like, all right, if it's one of my rods, I'll take it. If it's one of your rods, you take it. But then it was more so, it was like
just flip flopping.
We had a program in place.
The funny, just more like symbolism. Where I hooked where I hooked and landed and took that photo, is the exact spot where Brian put me on that fish in 2016, and I got that viral video. So it was, it's just funny how like you run through a river of shit and you come out clean on the other side. And it's like Brian helped us get back in line, and we happened to catch one of the bigger fish of the trip, and the first fish since all that crap happening in the exact spot where like Brian and I kind of forged our friendship. So
well, I remember there just being some like elation behind that, because at the end of the day, we're there to film an experience. And it's like, it's like you want to go out there, you want to catch alligator gar, but you also know like it has to be a certain caliber fish, or it's not like it's one of those ones where like, it's almost like it's not a real alligator gar if it's not over triple digits. So it's like once we had that one, it's like no matter what happens from here on out, we at least have something to build off. Like we have that showcase fish.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like we were pretty much had hung our hats on that and said, we got it.
Yeah.
We got the fish we came for.
Yeah. It's funny. Grant and I talked about that last night. Like one of my like bucket list things is getting a big tarpon. He's like, well, what do you consider big? I'm like, I kind of feels like it needs to be like a 7-footer. It's like a 6-footer, like 100-pounder. Like that's a big tarpon, but it's not a mega tarpon, you know. And it's the same thing with
I'd be happy with one of those.
Well, at this point, I'll take what I can get because I haven't. The biggest thing I caught's those ones down the Everglades with you, but
yeah,
I feel like it's kind of the same way with the alligator gar. Like a 6-footer is like cool.
Yeah, it's got to be a 7-footer.
Yeah, everything under 6 is like pretty much small. Like 5-footer's cool, 6-footer's even cooler. But like the fish you're after is a 7, like a 7+. That's like a real, you know, true trophy alligator gar. And the same way I kind of feel with the tarpon. Like I want that 7-foot 150 gigantor one. But yeah, we caught that fish and then went back to fishing, and I think you hooked up like pretty much right after that.
I thought that the one that I didn't get one until sundown, remember? I think we caught yours, and then I feel like it took a little while, and then I get one as the sun's going down, because remember, it was ultimately landed in the dark.
Yeah, that's the photo that we got of yours in the dark. Like those photos are super cool. And that was another one
north of 100 pounds. So it's like, all right, now we've both got one. Now we have definitely. So it's sort of like, it's awesome that you got one, but then like secretly I'm like, well, that doesn't change the fact that I just bought plane tickets, came all the way out here, and like I'd better get my damn fish.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's true though. It's true.
Yeah.
But so we ended what I think was day 3 with 2 trophy class alligator gar on film. We have all this stuff on film. Like, this is awesome. Like, everything's cool. Well, as we're driving back to the ramp, we start noticing these bugs. And it was like, I don't even know what to... I'm driving back, and they kept hitting me in the face and in the mouth. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like the sky opens up and it was like the plague. It was insane.
There was more bugs in the air than oxygen.
Yeah.
I remember I was breathing, like I had to put my hands over and breathe like down.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't open your mouth or you're swallowing them. It was that thick.
It was like, that almost became like a dangerous situation. Because like I'm trying to like run the boat back, but I can't keep my eyes open, and then I have a light so we don't hit anything, but I can't keep the light on because that attracts the bugs. It was a whitefly hatch, which I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently in the South they have like crazy whitefly hatches like in the summertime, and literally like billions of, if not trillions of them. And like we finally get back to the ramp, and I can't even, I might have even, I don't know. We got back to the ramp and loaded up, and like the entire bottom of the boat was already caked in mud.
Mud. I mean, and then they're mixed with the mud.
Yeah, you can't avoid like the mud in Texas. Like that's just, you're getting baptized in mud the second you start fishing for these things. And then on top of that, there's a layer of whiteflies all over everything. And it basically, I think you said it, my boat had been tarred and feathered. Like, it's literally,
that's exactly what it looked like.
Yeah, it's just, you just put a bunch of sticky mud all over everything and then dump a bunch of I mean, the boat, my hair, inside of my clothes and my nostrils and everything was vibrating. There's just bugs everywhere. It's like, that was like, okay, I couldn't figure out if that was payment for what had just happened or if we were setting up for something else, but it's just like, what the hell, dude? What else?
I know.
And it's just like, when you have that many living animals, like, they're going to start stinking. It doesn't matter if they're bugs or not. There's enough meat in the boat now to this point where they're going to... It's like we get up the next morning and have to drive into town and like... And I'm sorry to whoever owns the shop vac at the Madisonville car wash, but I'm like sucking up mud and bugs into it was just insane, dude. It was so bad. Just trying to clear the boat out of these things was nuts. And for some reason we went to Tractor Supply for a machete. I think we were having a hard time cutting up the fish, if I remember correctly. I bought I bought a machete and gloves. So somebody in Madisonville, Texas thinks I'm a serial killer. But so we get to the water that next day, and I think we ended up hooking into a fish that we had to cut the line on, and you like these fish will take the bait and they'll swim through trees and stuff, and you can't exactly get 100-pound fish back through trees. So what you have to do is cut the line, and usually you have like a float stop or something up there. You tie a little knot in it, and the fish takes the float and all through the tree, and usually the float pops up on the other side, and then you just retie. It's very hectic, and it's a nerve-wracking thing to do, but I think we've both probably done it a few times now. It's just something that goes along with this fishing. Well, I cut the line for David, or do you cut the line? I don't remember who cut the line, but the float goes into the tree and never comes back up. It's like, okay, like, did we just lose this fish / potentially kill this fish if it gets tied up, which you never want to have to do that. Like, you never want that to be the end result. But we searched and searched and searched. In the process of, like, doing all this, the shift linkage in my motor, like, breaks. It, like, so the reverse, neutral, and forward breaks. So I have to quickly grab a pair of vice grips and, like, grab the cable to, like, the shift cable for this jet motor. So it's just pandemonium, and I don't really remember what all happened the rest of that day. I don't think
I think that shift linkage had actually broken. Like, that was the reason we weren't even able to get to the rod in time in the first place. Like, it was broken beforehand. Because, like, we saw the float going, or we heard the bite alarm or something, and then when we went to go get the rod,
I'm like shifting, and all of a sudden it breaks. I'm like, okay. It's just another one of those instances of, like, something happening, and you have to immediately, like, you're supposed to already have the solution in your brain. That way you're not wasting any time. It's like, how the hell am I going to fix this? But we ended up doing that, and we got that kind of taken care of. I don't think we caught anything the rest of that day. I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think that was a rough day. It was just a lot of sitting and dealing with the heat. But I do know we searched that river like crazy for that. I mean, we ran like 2 miles upriver. We ran 2 miles downriver, back and forth, and it just flat out never came up.
Like,
so
they're like 12-inch balsa wood floats. You're not gonna miss it. So that float never came back up. I think what might have happened is, like, that fish might have been swimming with such speed in one particular direction that it never, because if it stops at all, the float's going to pop back up. There's like 100 yards of line out. But I don't know, man. We went up and down that river trying to find it and just could not find the float. And we were kind of a little dejected at, like, losing the fish, but also potentially, like, killing the fish if we never found it, because, like, any fish with that much line attached to it, it's basically a death sentence. I think we got out there the next day, and, like, we were fishing, but we also had, like, the mindset of, like, we might see this float again. At least I know I did. I'm like, there's a good chance we're going to run into it, because we're going through the same stretch. And, like, we're rolling up river, and all of a sudden I look, and the float's just in the middle of the river. I'm like, well, that's perfect. So tie up to it. You fought the fish and landed it, and I think it was like a 70-pounder or something like that. Wasn't like a giant one, but
no, it wasn't a giant one. It was good to get that rig back and, like, help the fish.
I think
so. It's like a small victory.
I think that might have been our last day there. I think. I can't quite remember. I know we caught two more fish after that, but I feel like it happened on that day for some reason.
Oh, was it? Yeah, you might be right. I got to look at what I was wearing.
Well, I know we caught that fish basically first thing, because we hadn't done anything yet. We were rolling up river to fish, and we passed that float. So I think we went.
Because I know we kept going upriver every day, and then, like, on a whim, we decided to try downriver.
I think it was kind of slow. We noticed that it was slow. There wasn't a lot of rolling fish. I think I caught one more, like, 6-footer, which we got on camera. That was cool. But then, like, the last evening we went downriver to this particular stretch, and I can't remember exactly why we went down there. I think it was just kind of on a whim, but that was probably like from a fight standpoint, just like to cap it off with that fish that you caught was like, I don't think that it couldn't have gotten better. Like that was probably the best like ending to the trip that we could have had. But I just elaborate on that one a little bit, because I think I think it's important to get your thoughts on it, on like kind of all of this stuff, because I
still don't. So ultimately, we fished that. It was kind of a 90-degree turn in the river, and like as you know, that's usually where the deepest water was. But I do remember that hole was like real deep, and it was real fraught with like a lot of. We hit a couple of spots like that, but it had a lot of like timber and crap on the like just stuff on the bottom, and I feel like we had missed, or at least got picked up at one point by one fish and either missed it or it dropped. It may have just dropped the bait. But I do remember we kept seeing some pretty good ones in there. But that was another one of those sundown fishes or late in the day fish. It was near sundown, and we hooked into it, and it was immediately clear that it was another big fish. It was just tremendously powerful fish that wanted to go into that deep water, and it was like, and then at some point it was just pure weight. There was no fighting anymore. It was just straight up 100% dead weight.
Tied up in that tree somehow. I remember like it seemed like it was taking line, but it was taking line down, and like it was like you're fighting it, but like it was going farther than the depth we had.
Yeah, the line wasn't moving; it was just going down. So it was
like, okay,
it was under something there for a little while.
There was
I thought we were gonna have to cut another line.
There's a very good chance we were gonna have to like redo that scenario, but. All I remember is like you fighting it vertical, like it was weird. It was like dead weight, just pulling it straight up. I don't know what that was about, but just like the vertical fight.
You know what's I've never had that happen before, but what's funny is like a few days ago I was talking to Philip Cairnduff, the Irish guy that lives down there, and he described exactly we didn't even discuss this story with him. And apparently he had the exact same thing happen to him. Like he was describing it, I'm like, I'm in the Twilight Zone right now, because everything you're saying right now happened to me. But it was like, I think that it had like dispelled all of its like, because when they gulp air, they do it for a couple different reasons, but I think it regulates like their buoyancy to a point. It just like stabilizes them, but it's I think at some point during the fight, it had like emptied all that stored oxygen out. Yeah. And it was just like zero buoyancy, and it wasn't moving. It wasn't doing anything. It just gotten to a point where the gar's body was vertical in the water. And it was like, I remember we were fighting right over it. I'm just trying to lift up. And it was like, this fish is like, I don't know, 150 plus pounds. But you have zero buoyancy.
It's like trying to lift a dead body.
It was like trying to lift. Yeah, it was pure weight. I remember. I was torquing as hard as humanly possible. I'm like, this hook's gonna bend out.
Yeah,
something's gonna break. And I just remember seeing it rise from the depths, and its mouth was open, like this ominous rising from the depths. Set of jaws coming.
That was the first
up.
fish of the trip that like actually gave us some like breaching and like tail walking and stuff too. Tail walked a little bit at the beginning, but it gets to the surface and like you're trying to hold it up, and I'm like, okay, give me the lasso, and like I'm looking down the barrel of this thing, like trying to get the rope around it, and of course, like in the fray, I got 9 inches of butt crack hanging out. So the best shot of this fish like thrashing, I have to like specifically edit it because there's so much of my ass out in the video. God,
you ruined my video.
Work on that, but yeah, we ended up lassoing it, getting it to shore. I mean, I'm pretty certain that was the like biggest fish of the trip. I'm almost certain that was like the largest. I think mine was right up there, but we had like 2 at the same size class and then like 2 at another size class. So we had 2 in like the 6-ish foot range and then 2 in the 7-ish foot range. But just nuts, man. To cap off the whole, I think we were just like depleted at that point anyway. It was just, we were like dirty. We so much, I mean, there was so much mechanical like fixing of things. Like I just remembered there was one point we were in the hotel parking lot and I'm like fixing the boat. I like reattached that linkage somehow. So I might have missed that somewhere in there, but
it was just one of those ones where like the shifts in momentum were so dramatic.
Yeah.
Like it was either like having the highs and catching the giant fish, but it was like instantaneously going all the way to something terrible. So it was like these catastrophic mechanical failures, or a catastrophic mechanical failure and having no bait, to getting the bait, catching a few fish, then to it kept going back and forth. And like the bug thing, people are like, oh, big whoop-de-doo, you got some bugs on you.
No, dude.
That was so far beyond description. This wasn't a simple, like, you getting a little bit of moths in your face because you got a headlamp on. Like, it was so chaotically thick. It was to the point, like, it became dangerous because you got to think when you're going upriver with a prop, or, we didn't have a prop. We had the jet motor. But you're going upriver and there's submerged timber. There's limbs that are sticking out. Yeah. Like, you've got to, like, know where you're going and avoid these obstacles. But you couldn't see. Like, when I say it was like you had visibility to about 12 inches in front of your face, and you had to keep your eyes closed because, I mean, they were getting in my shirt. They were in my pants. They were they were in places that they shouldn't be. I'm like, and I remember telling you, like, dude, you're going to have bugs in this boat 5 years from now.
I still do. I still
there's no getting them out. It was too much.
Working on some wiring the other day, and I look, there's like dried up carcasses and stuff. Like, geez.
It was like biblical plague proportions. Like, that's beyond. I've never experienced. No. I've seen some fly hatches similar, but that one was beyond anything I've ever seen.
It was very much like a whiteout, like blizzard.
Yeah, it was like going through a fog, but it's like.
Not only are they like hitting you in the eyes and stuff, and you're trying to like do the safety squint so you can see, but at the same time, like your headlight is only hitting it's not getting beyond the bugs to see what you're looking at. You're just illuminating the bugs. It looked
like in a Star Trek or Star Wars when they hit warp speed and all the stars go by. Yeah. All you just see is this like endless lines of bugs flying past.
Such a surreal like situation. Such a surreal feeling that entire trip, man. You go back like this happens a lot. Like I'll look back at situations and you're like, how did that ever work out? Or like how it just doesn't, like, why did we just keep going and eventually I don't know. Yeah. It's crazy how stuff works like that. But it was definitely one of those trips that, like, any one thing could have ruined a weaker, like, if your constitution wasn't so strong and you weren't so determined to do it, anybody else could have just bailed.
I thought that was, like, the ideal trip for you and I to go on together, because I remember, like, when we first started talking to begin with, around anything fishing related, was around the topic of Alligator Gar. So... Yeah. Then we talked for some years after that, and so for us to kind of converge on that river together.
Yeah. It's just funny how, like, life and fishing, and it's just funny how it all works out. We were on the separate path, kind of parallel one another for, like, so long, and then we finally connected and fished together, and then all this stuff is developed. But it's like, I was researching doing an alligator gar trip in like 2012, and it took me 2 years to finally get the puzzle pieces in place. But in those 2 years, I'm like scoping your videos out. I'm like, where is he fishing? Like trying to figure out like where. I was trying to like scalp your spot. I'm like, where is this dude at?
It was nowhere near there.
I know. I had no idea what I was doing. It was so fun. I look back, like I would watch Bubba Bedre's like videos, and it's like Palestine, like when we fished with like the TV shows, they'd have like Palestine, Texas. I'm like, okay, Palestine, Texas, that's where I need to try on the Trinity. Yeah. It's like, that's like saying you need to fish the Atlantic Ocean. Like there's so much water, I just thought I was doing this like detective work or whatever. But
Yeah.
I remember, man, I saw that video of you and I think your brother with the new
Hmm.
canoe, and like I was trying to do it in a kayak at the time, so it was like that whole deal, like just watching your videos and like trying to figure out how to apply that to what I was doing. It's just crazy how it all ended up on the same river, a
Oh,
decade
I know.
later, however long it was. But that trip I took in Texas was the same way, man. That's a whole other story. I literally drove my 95 Ford Ranger with 270,000 miles on it to Texas by myself and like just floated this. It was such a cluster, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Well, that's a
Well,
story for another
that's a
day.
kind of trip where like if you're gonna go with a partner, you got to like really do your homework on who you're gonna go out there
Yeah.
with. Because there were so many opportunities where like you did not need a super pessimistic person to be in your ear.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, because I've had times on the river. So my oldest brother, Travis, who's
Hmm.
was always the guy in those videos, is a great partner because he's like the ultimate. He's like optimistic to a fault,
Yeah.
where it's like he'll lead you into dangerous situations because nothing's gonna happen.
Like
But
showing up with a bunch of beer and peaches, and I
yeah,
think we've already talked about
no
that. But
water or food.
yeah.
But I've also been out there before with people who wilted and broke
Yeah.
under much less severe and much less challenge than what we faced.
Yeah.
And it was like they're just tapping and breaking and it was just so it's like
Well,
if I would get
you
it's
probably get
funny.
this. Yeah. You probably get the same thing that I get. It's like you'll do a trip like that, and then you talk about it, and everybody's like, "Oh man, next time you go, let me know. I'll
Yeah.
go with you. I'm all about that." It's like you have no idea how much it sucked. Like, just
Yeah.
the level, like chasing big fish and like the whole freshwater monster fish scene and all that. Like, there's so many different like places to go and challenges and all this, but I would wager to bet that Texas is right up there with some of the most harsh, like pain in the ass just dealing with. The only other thing that I could think is like maybe like if you were on like a goonch catfish trip and you have like pack in all your stuff into like the Himalayas. But like other
Yeah.
than that, like you're in the sun the whole time. There's no shade. The bait smells terrible. And unless you're getting a shower every night, which that you may or may not be, depending on how you're doing it. If you have a hotel, fine. But if you don't, like you're living
Hmm.
with that mud on you for days at a
Yeah.
time. And it like gets in your leg hair and rips it all out. You're downstream
The
from Dallas,
I
so it's
think
like
the guys that are
half of
like
it's poop.
yeah, the guys that are local down there at this point probably have like a certain system in place to where like they under. But if you're like some outsider that's coming in and you're equipped with a canoe or a kayak or
Yeah.
just it's you if anybody who's listening to this that may have some kind of ambition of doing like a do it yourself alligator gar trip, you have to like off the bat mentally prepare that you're going to run into trouble.
Yeah.
You're going to get muddy, and there's no getting around the heat. So it's like if you're kind of coming from a mental place where you embrace the reality
Yeah.
of difficulties,
Yeah.
you're kind of like already ready. But you can never go there. And
Yeah.
like you said, your friends, I get the same thing. I have people look at the photos because I got this awesome picture of a
Yeah.
giant fish, and that's all you can think of. And it's easy to think you're going to show up and that they're everywhere, but it's
Yeah.
I don't know. Most people, I think, will enjoy, I don't know, some of that challenge, but I don't know, dude. Like that one that me and you went through, that was probably some of the worst. And it was just coming in succession. Like it was like the shit that was being thrown at us. It was such a rapid fire. It was very easy to like be like, let's just be done. Like or
Yeah.
after we even got the first fish, be like, that's great, that's good. We
Yeah.
got it. So let's be done with this.
It's
But
very much like it got to the point where it was like a comedy where like something good happened, something bad happened. It became like a joke.
yeah,
It's like, all right, well, we caught a big fish. What terrible thing is going to
I
happen
know. I was like
next?
starting to watch my back after would catch one.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, so now what?
It was nuts, dude. I broke the trolling motor, broke my main outboard, broke my truck. I can't even think of what else. But And then that was
Yeah.
just like the first leg of my trip. I still had 3 more weeks on the road of like
Yeah.
driving, and which is a whole other thing. We talked last time about Borger, Texas, and like the Panhandle and all that, where you're from,
Hmm.
dude. I left when I dropped you off at the airport. I drove from basically College Station, Texas to Idaho, which takes you across Texas up through the Panhandle into like New Mexico and then Colorado. I mean, it's such a crazy long, like it's longer to get from Texas to Idaho than it is from Virginia to Texas. So like
Oh,
I had a whole other 2 day road trip driving, and it's just you get into that Texas
yeah.
panhandle at night, dude, and it is so dark. It is the
Yeah.
darkest place. I mean, you might as well be adrift in the ocean. Like it is so
Right.
dark. And then like to top off the creepiness, like the cell towers they have out there, they all
Hmm.
have them blink at the exact same moment. So it's like you're driving and like it's perfectly flat. So for hundreds of miles, just watching these red lights blink at you and blink
Yeah.
at you and blink at you. It's like, dude, it was so creepy. It's just like with all of that bad stuff that happened, I had that in the back of my mind. Like, okay, I had all these other mechanical failures, but if I break down out here, I'm officially screwed because you're hundreds of miles from anything out
Yeah.
there. I mean, it's you might get some like grease monkey mechanic shop, some dude that's like doing it on the part time, but you're not getting like a 4 bay like professional tune up mechanic. Like you're out in the middle of nowhere legitimately. So I don't know. That whole
Yeah.
trip was just a giant like insane cluster of good and bad.
Well, the
But
good thing is at the end of it, we caught really good, solid, like quality sized fish.
yeah,
I think we did a good job of catching most of that tribulations on film. That's
yeah,
the thing is like it's so hard to be disciplined, like in the midst of when the crap is happening,
yeah,
to want to like be like, wait a minute, let me
yeah,
grab the camera and capture this. It's like you'd rather contend with the obstacle and like
yeah,
deal with the issue than to be like, hold on a minute, like
yeah. That's I with the way we film and stuff. Like I like the fact that we're doing it Survivor Man style and we're like self
right.
filming and everything, but it is in those moments where you wish you had a third person that was like detached from what it like everything that's happening. So like I can be mad and I can stress out about the situation and somebody else can just film it because that would make so much better content. But then it's like
Yeah.
it just takes away from the like grassroots of it all where you're trying to make it happen yourself. But I don't know, man. It's just a crazy. It's a hell of a way to kick off that whole like filming thing. Like
Yeah,
just
that was definitely a tone setter, but
yeah,
that'll be a fun one. It'll be fun when that comes back out because it'll be in a time where it's like time has passed and I'll be able to sort of like relive some of those moments.
yeah,
You know,
just
I feel like once I start seeing that, I'll be, oh yeah, that's what happened.
yeah, yeah. I
So
can't even thinking about it. Right. I mean, like going to Bucky's and getting like chicken tacos and washing our
yeah.
clothes and just a a washing machine that's just in the hallway of this hotel, like outside.
Well, that little wood shack that we stayed in, I remember I washed my clothes in the shower,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in like
It's
cake
it,
that thing with mud.
it was literally like a 15 by 15 like shed that this person's converted into like a little cabin with bunk beds and like a shower, but it's great if you're like 90 pounds, but like I'm getting the
Yeah.
shower is one corner of a very
It was
small
so
bathroom.
tiny.
I'm like in there trying to wash and like the rest of my body's touching like the shower curtain. I'm like, this is gross, dude. I mean, is I don't know. You think of how many people like that dude's not cleaning that bathroom, so it's
No,
like how many people's soap scummed bodies have touched this thing that's now
I know.
touching me. It was I don't know, man. It's good times, but yeah, I guess I don't. Are we leaving anything out? I can't.
Probably. That was such a dynamic trip that had like all elements of like bad things happening and then
Yeah,
rebounding and then like being pressed with challenge and then like overcoming it and having a win and then another thing being thrown and it was just one after another. So that was like the ultimate kind of trip that's like you don't want that crap happening while you're there.
Yeah.
But like after the fact, you're like appreciate that you had those like layers to the story.
Yeah.
So it's like the best stories always have. All my favorite Gar trips I've ever had some element of something horrible happen, whether it was like a catastrophic, like life-threatening storms,
Yeah.
or being ill prepared and not having adequate like water,
Yeah.
and almost dying of heat stroke. Like it sucks while it's there, but then like later after you overcome it, especially if there's a big fish at the end of all that, like if you actually caught what you were there to catch, then it becomes I don't know, a better story. So that one really had it. I mean, man, there were so many opportunities where I felt like we were circling the rim of having to leave. Like we're like, well, this is it. We ain't coming past this. And I am convinced when you're talking about axles breaking and like the mechanics of the boat breaking and just all the crap that happened, many other people, and I just based this off of other folks that I've encountered and fished with, would have never been able to, myself included. I have the savviness mechanically. Like if you weren't there or Brian wasn't there, and if it was just like me, that'd have been it. I just lost. It'd have been a failure. So
I don't know. I think it's just a testament to being able to lean on people's strengths, you know. So like I said, I mean, we could have got the truck fixed, and if you hadn't caught that bait, then we still are in the same situation of not being able to catch fish. So I think we all did what little part we needed to do to keep chugging down the tracks to eventually having success with all that. So, and that's the other thing too, dude. Like you can hire a guide and catch the fish, and that's great. Nothing against that, but there's just something about doing the DIY thing and like getting drugged through the mud and getting your ass handed to you that makes that catch just that much sweeter. So, and I think like out of all the big stuff, Alligator Gar is one of the probably more DIY ones if you do enough research. But I don't know. Well, I mean, we're a testament to that. Well, if you're committed enough, you can DIY it.
Some of the more local and seasoned people who live there and do it every day are probably listening back. It's not even that hard. Y'all ran into that challenge because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's true. Other people who may come and have similar ambitions also won't know what they're doing. So it's important to highlight things that you might run into and be able to demonstrate some ability to get past it. It's not anything to be ashamed of, but it's like, dude, when your axle snaps in the middle of that, it's not like that's a monkey wrench that can be thrown into into any situation.
That, for that to have happened too was just insane. Basically, no stress on the truck either. It just broke randomly. I drove 1,000 miles before that,
and it only happened and I drove 25 feet.
Yeah.
So I'm like the whole time I'm like, what did I do wrong? Did I jack his truck up? You had made it halfway across the country just fine. As soon as I put my foot on the accelerator, it
was the worst sound too.
I was like, well, do I have the death touch?
Dude, I don't know.
And at first you're like, it's fine, just keep going. I'm like, no, something's wrong.
Well, it never crossed my mind that was what was happening. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, but
I was like, this isn't just a noise. Like, there's something wrong.
Yeah, something is very broken. And I've broken it 2 more times since then. So I've discovered that I have some sort of problem with my 4-wheel drive, and I just have to get it fixed. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just bad luck. But I don't know, man. But yeah, some people that live there might say it was ridiculous. But guess what? Most of the world doesn't live in East Texas. So people that listen to this could relate to how these trips go. I mean, it is a DIY trip if you're committed enough, but you know, if you don't want to go through all that, the guide's the next best thing. So there's some guys down there that really put people on monster fish. So it's good stuff, but that's all I got, man. I think maybe we'll sprinkle in some of these other trips that we've went on and filmed through the course of these podcasts. Maybe we'll elaborate on these individual episodes a little bit more, but that's all I have right now.
I can leave people with a cliffhanger. If we get into the Goliath grouper episode, you'll learn of one of the most sad stories of heartbreak.
Oh
And
God, yeah.
a fish that gets away under the most horrible conditions. That's a situation where I wish I would have kept rolling and filming you,
Yeah.
but I don't want to give spoilers.
Yeah.
I'll leave people wondering what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the worst part about that is the Goliath grouper was right up there with my tarpon, and I haven't caught my tarpon yet, but I finally captured my Goliath grouper.
Yeah.
Well,
you got to spend a little bit of time with it.
About 15 seconds. So, anyway. But good stuff, man. I think that'll do it for this episode. We're about an hour and a half in, something like that. Maybe a little over that, but yeah. So check out David's latest podcast with David Rocca. Sounds like a pretty solid dude. Want to listen to that one? I'll probably, if it comes out. What time do you normally release yours?
Like 5 in the morning. It's either 4 or 5 in the morning. I try to put it like right when people are starting to wake up for their jobs.
I'll try to I'm gonna be in the middle of I'm actually leaving as soon as we get done recording this, so I'll be in the middle of the mountains, but I'll see if I can't download it first thing in the morning to listen to throughout the day tomorrow. So hopefully the next time you talk to me, I've captured this giant, magnificent brown trout. But we'll see.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know.
So.
But anyway. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out the haverodswilltravel.com website to catch all the rest of the podcast, both video and audio. Check out the page. We have a bunch of articles and stuff like that on it. If you're listening to this on Spotify, give it 5 stars. Get our rating up. Do that with all of the HRWT Studios stuff. I don't know. Does Apple have the same rating system like Apple Podcast?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, because
Okay.
I've got a few. I think some of ours already have a few from people who, and I appreciate those who've given the feedback because, you want to know that.
Yeah.
You want to know what people think,
Yeah, this thing's very much still in its infancy. We're still working bugs out and trying to figure out how to carry a conversation for an hour and a half. It seems like it gets tired when we record or it gets difficult when we record at the end of the day. We're all tired and worn out from a day's worth of activities, but thanks for tuning in. I think that's all we got. You got anything to leave us on?
Nope, I think you pretty much covered it.
Right on. All right,
we'll catch them next time.
Yep, see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you later.